Just checking in here. Wanted to talk about why fasting works and what's going on in the body when you're in a fast. So several of the members have done fasts. I've done fasts. And here's why it's so beneficial. If we look at our blood sugar, let's say our blood sugar is 200, and we stop eating. We stop at this point. This is a static. So we have a blood sugar of 200. And here's our artery, okay? So this is all glucose in the artery. As this circulation is taken away and it goes to muscles, it goes to other organs, you know, goes to our brain, the basic premise is all of this glucose is going to flow out and there's not going to be any glucose left. However, your body doesn't allow the glucose to go to zero. So what happens is you initiate a process called gluconeogenesis. Basically, this means make new glucose. So some of the places that it does that is it looks for glucose that's first readily available. That's what's already stored in the muscles. So the muscles are actually donating glucose back to the blood, and as is your liver. So that's donating glucose back to the blood. But eventually these same systems that give up their glucose consume the glucose. So it creates a need for a sugar. So there's a base level of sugar, a base level of glucose that's always in the blood. And that's maintained by this. And that will metabolize some skeletal muscle and some other things like to keep that sugar at a base level. Then the other big repository of fuel is basically fat. And so what happens is as you deplete all the glucose here and here, this gets called into question. Interestingly enough, your heart runs on free fatty acids almost all the time. It's the preferred fuel for the heart. So, but fat gets called up, and what it does is it's dumping into the blood supply free fatty acids. They can be used by your muscles, they can be used by your heart, and they can't be used by your brain. So what happens is, as you burn these free fatty acids, you start to make something called ketones. Actually, they're called ketone bodies. And that runs your brain. So this is a mammalian adaptation. So not all animals can do this, but human beings do it exceptionally well. And the reason that this is necessary in humans is our brain is only, roughly 3% of our weight, but it uses up to 20% of the energy of the body. So we have this big brain that has very hungry for fuel, and it can go through our regular glucose and everything, but it needs to run on a secondary fuel called ketones. So ketones are a neat thing, neat adaptation, and basically what it is a survival mechanism. One of the things that people notice when they're on a fast is after they've gone through all of their glucose, after they've burned through all of their glycogen in their muscles and their liver, and they're into ketosis, they'll notice that their brain function is actually better. They're actually sharper. Their senses are better. They see better. They smell better. They hear better. Their bodies are functioning at a higher state. And the reason that is a survival mechanism. So when you're in this basically state of famine, your body wants to be able to efficiently hunt and efficiently find food, and it can't do that if you're lethargic, if you can't see well, if you can't smell well, if you can't hear well. So you're in a survival mechanism. So you're burning ketones. It creates a very efficient burn, a very high level of cognition, and you don't get the dragging down. You don't get the afternoon fatigue after you eat. You don't. You just run clean fuel. Okay, so that's a very neat adaptation. One of the things we can do, so we can check our blood glucose pretty readily with a finger prick. You know, it's pretty easy to do. It's a little harder to check our insulin level. You have to go to a lab. However, one thing we know is that when we're in ketosis here, we know that there's not much of this around. High insulin levels will block ketosis. So the higher our insulin goes, the lower our ketones go. And so if you eat a big starchy meal, and then you do a test to see if you're putting off any ketones in your urine, there's not going to be any there. You're just not going to be putting out ketones. And this is for a normal, not a type 1 diabetic. So this is just totally different talk for a type 1 diabetic. This is for people with regular metabolism, type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetic states. So your body's going to put off ketones when you're in ketosis. Some people can stay in ketosis if they eat 50 grams of carbs a day. And then some people are less. Some people are 25 or so. So it depends on the person and how big of a person you are. If you have, so I'm about 205 pounds. I've got a lot of muscle. I can burn up a lot of fuel. So I might stay in ketosis at a higher level of carbohydrate than a 100-pound woman who eats 25 or 30 carbs. So it just depends on the individual. But the ketones are definitely an indication that we are burning fat as energy. And now we've actually can measure it because we can say, okay, if we do a urine strip, a urine test strip, it's going to show us if there's ketones in our urine. Now, as you learn how to burn more ketones more efficiently, your ketones that you put out in your urine are actually going to go down because your body's going to get more metabolically efficient at using them as fuel. So you're going to see less on your strip, but don't fret. As long as you're putting off ketones, you're in ketosis, and you're not partially in ketosis. You're in ketosis. You're putting off ketones. So this is a good thing to have happen, and it's just why a fast will work so well. So for one of our members here, he said his blood glucose was pretty high, and so his blood glucose started out 253, and then, so here's your normal range, and then he was 118 after he quit his fast and he started eating again. So all of this glucose here was consumed, and all of this insulin that was up here started to fall down into the normal range again, just basically because his body was metabolizing all the sugar that was around and all the sugar that was stored as glycogen in his muscles. And so now there's nothing left to eat. The body's still hungry, so it goes, okay, well, I'm out of the easy food. So your body looks at where it is and says, okay, I can't go to the refrigerator anymore. I have to go to the grocery store. So the grocery store is your body fat. That's what you're carrying around in your abdomen, your waist, your hips, depending on you, your person, but also the sex of you. So men tend to carry it around their waist, women more on their buttocks and thighs. But that's the grocery store. So that is food. So your body then has to go to the grocery store to get that. And so that's what it does. So as you go to the grocery store, you start to metabolize that fat, using that as energy. And now, after that metabolism going on a little while, you're going to see ketones being put out. And so this is a very efficient mechanism of getting somebody out of what's called metabolic syndrome, where they're stuck here and they have high insulin as well. And then they'll probably have high blood pressure. They may have cholesterol issues. So very easily here, I could see this person being prescribed 5 or 6 drugs. So we're going to have a blood pressure medication. We're going to have 2 anti-diabetic. We're going to have a statin drug for cholesterol. And maybe that's probably about it. Maybe another 1 or 2 for blood pressure. It depends on how unstable. But we'll see people on loads of medication when the answer could be already present. And in one of my videos, is actually my rant, I said, if you want to get well, just stop eating, you know. And so it sounds overly simplistic, but it is the single fastest route to correcting metabolic dysfunction. So you can't, obviously, that's not the long-term solution. You can't not eat forever. But what you can do then is eat in a very specific way. That's what metabolic programming is actually about. It's how do I now maintain the benefits of the fast? How do I eat? What do I eat? When do I eat? How much do I eat? Do I have to starve myself all the time? These are all the questions that people ask me. And, you know, in some cases, you may be required to do fasts every 4 to 6 weeks until you get your weight into a maintenance level. And then once you're there, then you can go back to your normal habits. However, what you need to understand is here, this is a disease state. This is full-on type 2 diabetes. This is a disease state. This is not a joke. So it becomes dire that you make a change, or else you're going to be here, and then that won't even manage you. The worst part about all of this is it doesn't actually even fix you. So you still have the metabolic dysfunction. You just have a bunch of drugs covering it up. You still have insulin resistance. So if you don't know what insulin resistance is, watch the videos on insulin resistance. But you still have insulin resistance. That's the actual target. The target is the insulin resistance. The blood sugar is byproduct. If your insulin's not doing its job, the blood sugar is a byproduct. But it is your habits and behaviors that have caused this problem. And so that's what we're trying to help you to fix. And part of the fixing it is understanding it. So if you don't understand what created the problem, you're never going to be able to fix it. So the big issues, here they are. You eat too much, you eat too often, and you eat the wrong things. So, you know, that's why fasting works so well, because it fixes all of those problems immediately. You stop eating too often because you're not eating. You're not eating too much because you're not eating, and you're not eating the wrong things because you're not eating. So we fixed all three of those things, but we don't have to go on a complete fast to fix it. We can actually fix it now and maintain it with the proper diet, behavioral changes, and understanding. So that's what this is about. But this is why the fast works so well. This is also something that 99% of the people that you're going to talk to won't understand. So this is why you're going to get the negativity. This is why you're going to get those people saying, oh, that's crazy. You should never miss meals. You should always eat breakfast. Well, let me tell you something. Breakfast is overrated. If your breakfast is cereal, toast, juice, waffles, pancakes, whatever, you're better off skipping that. That is not a healthy breakfast. That is not good for you. So if that's what breakfast is, don't eat that. And if your lunch is fast food or whatever else it is, you're better off not eating that and then having a sensible dinner. And so instead of eating crap and junk all day, you eat one healthy meal that day, and it may even have, you know, a lot of calories in it. It may even be like a pretty big meal. You're still better off than eating multiple sessions of crap per day. So this is the thing people don't understand. So they say, well, you know, you're supposed to eat 3 times a day. And if you don't eat 3 times a day, it's unhealthy. Well, if 2 of those meals are junk, you're way better off eating 1 good meal a day than you are eating 2 crappy meals and 1 good meal a day. Way better off. Because to gain knowledge is to add things, and to gain wisdom is to take things away. So sometimes it's wiser to take things away. Take junk away. Take bad habits away. And then allow good things to set up. So this is an understanding issue. People that you talk to, people that you encounter in your life, they are not going to understand. And that's okay. They don't have to understand. I tell people stuff all the time, they don't understand it. And then they come back and go, oh, that's what you meant. I'm like, yeah, that's what I meant. But at that moment in time, they couldn't understand it. They didn't own it. So you can't sell what you don't own. So if you don't own these principles, it's hard for people around you to understand it. But if you lay it out on paper, like I do, I'd say, here's what happens. Then people go, oh, wait a minute. So you mean I don't have to have breakfast if I really don't want breakfast? No, don't eat breakfast. You know, what if I'm not hungry at lunchtime? Don't eat lunch. You know, now the big things on diabetic management is they give you, you know, insulin and metformin and all these other things, and they want you to eat a certain amount of carbohydrates when you take those things. So this becomes tricky. The reason it's tricky is if you don't take carbohydrates in when you take these things, you can get low. You can go very low. Or you can just, you know, work on not having to take those medicines or use less insulin. If you're a type 1 diabetic, it's important to know that you're going to need insulin forever. You need insulin for the rest of your life. However, and this is the big however, if you can use less and manage yourself better, that's far healthier. So the idea is that a lot of type 1 diabetics have is that they like to keep their sugar higher than normal. So they'll, instead of being, you know, 110 to 70, they tend to keep theirs at 180 or 150. Well, over time, that HbA1c is going to go up. So we know this. We know that that's going to go up. And that indicates an active disease state. So we want to try to get better management, tighter management there. So the smallest amount of insulin, the minimum effective dose, is the amount of insulin that you want. And when I say minimum effective dose, I mean the minimum amount of insulin that's going to keep you healthy, well, in a close to normal range for your lifetime. So don't go, I'm going to eat the cake and take a bolus of insulin. Don't eat the cake. You know, it's just, it's like, you know, it's hard to get this understanding because they don't see the immediate impact, but there is an impact, and it costs people their lives. So this is why fasting is so good. This is why it's something that's easy. It's cheap. It costs $0. You don't need to do a juice fast. In fact, don't do a juice fast. It's a lot of sugar, and it doesn't really fix you the way that this does. So when you're eating stuff, so this is the big thing on water fasting. I call it water fasting, and I have a guide. It's in this group. It's for free. You download it. It tells you how to do it. Read the guide. But the reason that you don't need to do a juice fast is every time you consume something that requires digestion, you bump out of what's called autophagy. Autophagy is what actually happens when you're in a fasted state. And when you're in autophagy, your body will go out and look for all of the cells that are dead, damaged, dying, or diseased. And it'll eat those cells. It'll consume those cells. So in a way, you're consuming the sickest parts of you. That could be your joints that ache. That could be anything. The worst parts of it are broken down. And then new cells are rebuilt. It also resets your hormone levels. It resets your blood pressure. It does a lot of different things. But when you're doing a juice fast, you're really depriving yourself of that autophagy. So don't do a juice fast. And don't buy one of these fancy schmancy $300 detox purification blah 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 blah. That's a bunch of baloney. That's just supplements manufacturers taking advantage of people. Water. It's super inexpensive, and I have a recipe for the salts that you want to do. So a little bit of magnesium, a little potassium, a little sodium, and sometimes I even say throw a little baking soda in there to buffer it. But those salts will maintain your body's function and help you stay healthy during your fast. You don't actually have to do it. It just makes it better. It makes it easier. But it's all in the guide. It's all free. Water fast costs you $0, and super healthy, great thing to do. I believe everybody should do it at least once or twice a year. And if you have, you know, type 2 diabetes or you're pre-diabetic, you should probably do some every 4 to 6 weeks or so. And then between those fasts, I would recommend intermittent fasting and really learning how to eat, because many of the habits that people have, their diet and lifestyle habits, are really causing them to remain sick. So those are the things we want to change. We want to try to get us out of that. So that's it. If you have questions, please leave them here. So these videos, the purpose of these videos is to inform and educate and enlighten. If you know people that need to watch these videos, please like and share them. Leave comments. Engagement helps. So if you leave a comment and we get answers back and forth, more people will see this, more people will learn, more people will understand. Also to invite people to our groups. So metabolic programming is in this group, and then I have another group that's more general health stuff. But I look at things differently. I don't look at things in the same way as everybody else does. And so that approach can be very effective in a short period of time, and people will think you're a little bit crazy, but so what? You know, everybody thinks I'm crazy anyway. So that's it. Like and share. Thank you so much. And then there's a poll in this group about what topics or questions or anything you want to have answered. Fill in the poll. Engage, ask questions. We want you to ask questions. There's no dumb questions except the ones you don't ask. All right, thank you so much. Have a good day.